What if AI's clearest economic impact is not replacing office workers, but helping people troubleshoot equipment and navigate government paperwork? Welcome to the Automated Daily, Hacker News Edition, the podcast created by generative AI. I'm Trend Teller, and today is July 23rd, 2026. This episode is brought to you by 11 Labs. 11 Labs lets you discover the future of AI audio with cutting-edge voice technology. Find the link in the episode notes. Let's start with Google, which had two very different stories in the spotlight today. First, the company released the first version of its AI and economy atlas, built from 15 million de-identified interactions across Gemini products. The notable finding is that AI use looks broad, but not all-consuming. People are mostly using it for research, drafting, collaboration, troubleshooting, and general assistance, rather than handing over entire jobs. The data also suggests AI is showing up beyond office work, including technical and manual roles, and even in everyday tasks like shopping research or dealing with public services. Why that matters is simple. It paints a more realistic picture of adoption. AI seems to be fitting into slices of work and daily life, not just acting as a full automation engine. It also raises a familiar concern, because usage still tracks closely with national wealth, pointing to a growing digital divide. The second Google story came from Brussels, where the European Commission fined the company 890 million euros under the Digital Markets Act. Regulators say Google favored its own services in search and restricted app developers from steering users toward cheaper offers outside its app store. Google says it will appeal, but the broader significance is hard to miss. Even as large platforms push deeper into AI, regulators are still focused on old-fashioned market power, fairness, and whether gatekeepers are shaping choices before users ever see the alternatives. In developer tooling, a project called Cruller is getting attention for taking a knife to Bun and keeping only the parts needed to run production ops. It is a fork of Bun's last Zig-based release, brought forward to Zig 0.16 and stripped of a lot of the development extras. The idea is not to replace Bun outright, but to see how small and focused a modern JavaScript runtime can become when deployment is the priority. Early signs suggest the runtime can be meaningfully smaller without a major performance penalty. That makes this an interesting experiment for teams that want fast JavaScript infrastructure but do not want to ship an entire toolbox along with it. Another widely discussed post comes from the editor wars, or maybe the anti-editor war camp. A developer laid out a real Emacs 29 setup for Scala, Kotlin, and Java, using Eglot as the core LSP client. The key point is not nostalgia. It's that a lightweight, scriptable editor can still handle serious JVM work if you are willing to tune it and work around the rough edges. That matters because it shows there is still room between bare-bones text editing and a heavyweight IDE. For developers who care about reproducible environments, custom workflows, and staying close to the tools, this is a strong argument that the old editor can still do modern work.
On the performance side, one article tried to demystify SIMD, and judging by the reaction, it landed. The argument is that SIMD is not some exotic technique reserved for compiler experts. In many cases, it is just a practical way to make a hot loop handle several values at once instead of one at a time. The real significance is that it lowers the barrier for everyday developers. If you work on parsing, searching, counting, or transforming lots of data, you may not need a complicated redesign to get meaningful gains. Sometimes a simple explicit vectorized approach is enough, and that is a useful mindset shift. And finally, a more mathematical item that still has that classic hacker appeal of untangling an old puzzle. A discussion around the Jacobian conjecture re-examines an apparent counterexample and shows that the underlying algebraic construction is actually much cleaner than it first appeared. The variety turns out to be equivalent to ordinary affine 3-space, and the resulting polynomial map lines up with a known classical example after some straightforward coordinate changes. Why does that matter? Because instead of introducing a new mystery, it helps explain an old one. In a problem area where examples can remain obscure for decades, simply making the structure clearer is valuable progress. Thanks to our sponsor, SurveyMonkey. Don't just know what happened, know why. SurveyMonkey can help you unlock insights by combining feedback with operational data to get vital context. Find the link in the episode notes. That's the roundup for July 23rd, 2026. Links to all stories can be found in the episode notes. Thanks for listening to the Automated Daily, Hacker News Edition.